exactly what they wanted to be. So in other words, you're doing exactly what you thought you'd be doing. You are guided perhaps by your parents or by your mentor. How many people are doing that exactly? No one else. Ah, lucky one. You're the lucky one.
Can you repeat that?
The question is, how many people grew up knowing exactly what they wanted to be, and they are that thing right now? Say you grew up wanting to be a doctor, and you're a doctor. Yeah? All right. Not very many, huh? I'm not the only one then. So, yeah, I was watching a comedy by the comedian Russell Peters from Brampton, and he was referring to the fact that if he goes to a hospital and he sees an Indian doctor, he will really not be excited. He will be like, well, she probably did not want to be a doctor, was just forced to be a doctor. I don't know if she's really into this, you know. But if he goes to the hospital and then he sees a black doctor, he will be, that's the guy I want. Because this guy must have gone through all kinds of troubles to become the doctor that he is. He really, really wanted to be a doctor, you know, because maybe his friends were like, oh man, let's go do this, let's go. And he's like, no. Oh, maybe man, he's gonna be a doctor. And he became a doctor, so he really wanted to be a doctor. So me as well, when I was growing up, you know, I was into music. Sometimes I'd just be banging on the, you know, teenage years, you're all into this rap thing. I was excited about it, I loved music. In my mind, I would be a musician. But the other thing that I did as well was being interested in student governance. So like being a class president or being in the Scouts movement. That's the only thing that perhaps I sustained all the way to now, because now I work my profession is as a policy analyst, so public policy, public programs. So perhaps that's something that I sustained, but I never imagined that I would be doing that as a profession. I thought it was just like a hobby, but it's become a profession. And what I thought was a profession is now the hobby. So, and when I eventually applied to go to university, in fact, the first time, guess what I applied to be? Doctor, because that seemed to be the only thing that made sense. You know, it's the only thing that you can explain to somebody that, yes, I'm studying to be a doctor. So I applied, and I was in Nairobi, Kenya, and then I got admitted. And first semester, things really became dull. All the interesting lab things that I was interested, that seemed interesting in high school now seemed boring to me. Like, for some reason, I was just out of my mind in the class, and I eventually dropped out, not really because I was not excited, but because of I couldn't pay and so on, but perhaps that was meant to be. So I dropped out, and then, guess who else? Well, I dropped out, and then I went back to university to become what I am right now. So guess who else dropped out? The guy who made your iPhones, right? Steve Jobs. He dropped out, not knowing exactly what he was going to do in the world, you know. And that's what he said. I remember listening to him giving a commencement speech at Stanford in 2005, and he says, well, when I dropped out, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I know for sure that the university was not going to help me become what I wanted to become. So I went out and figured it for myself. And he says that now you cannot connect the dots looking forwards. Paraphrase him, you can only connect them looking backwards. Mm-hmm. And you just go whatever you're doing, hoping that eventually it will work out. You don't know exactly, but you hope it works out. You hope the dots will connect eventually. And he says, looking back, dropping out was the best decision he ever made. Now, we cannot all drop out of school like Steve Jobs. The universities would be empty. But we do need somebody to help us connect the dots, you know. For some of us, maybe you have a parent that cares and can really coach you to become what you want to be, or you have a mentor or an uncle. But for far too many people, perhaps they don't have that uncle or that parent that cares for them enough to discover what they're interested in and, you know, nurture them to be that. And so my call to you is to try to be that person to somebody, a young person or a child that you find might be interested in certain things, help them to become what they want to be at an early time so that they can go on to become the best in their game, top of their game, instead of flip-flopping the way I did or most of us did. And so now you are allowed to flip over your paper, the paper in front of you, which is my first Toastmasters evaluation. I mean, the first evaluation for my first Toastmasters speech more than a year ago. And because I believe that Toastmasters offers some kind of mentorship, please read through those comments and tell me if they reflect who you think I am, even what I've spoken about, or my speeches from before, or my standing here to do other things. Tell me, have I grown? Have I continued to sustain those qualities that were positive, or what? Anybody can jump in. I'm looking for your feedback.
You want us to speak now?
Yes, sure, anybody.
Okay.
What do you notice?
Number one, I think you do have a natural talent of telling stories. You do very well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, please.
I'm still very impressed on how you don't use notes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Anybody else?
I like the way
Yes.
you express yourself by gestures.
Yes.
You know, it tells the story, their body language, and I like that.
Thank you very much. Maybe one last person?
The last question is, what did you like about presentation? And the answer is everything. And I think the story you tell tonight came from experience and your personal thinking, and it's right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Please, next time to be a mentor to somebody, could be in school or some organization that I will found in the future.